And of course, Chris is with us each and every week, and he's back this time once again with some incredible maritime history. Chris, welcome back.
Thanks, Barry. It's great to be back.
Yes, and we've got some great maritime history this week that you've handpicked, which ties in very nicely with the news from Cunard, of course, about the announced captain for the beautiful new ship Queen Anne. And you're going to tie that in very, very nicely with the changes to the livery that have happened over the past 180 years.
Yeah, so when they announced, Baz, that the captain of Queen Anne will be Captain Inga Klein-Thorghaus, who, of course, is a very much-loved captain with Cunard, and she was, in fact, the first female captain for Cunard. But for people who have been watching the Queen Anne information with a keen eye, they would have noticed that the ship's livery is slightly tweaked compared to what it is on the current fleet.
Yep.
And in saying that, the hull, the paint for the hull, the black part goes up right up to the top deck of the bow, whereas the current ships have a white, about a one-story deep white stripe along the front. And you'll also notice that the name Cunard has been brought down into the hull in white, and then the Cunard crest is being included on the hull as sort of like part of the sort of hull art, I suppose. But of course, a little bit different from what they've got in the existing ships.
It's classic but different, yeah.
Yes, yeah. And the funny thing is about this is that it is a difference, it is a change, but it's definitely not the first time Cunard's changed its livery. If you go back to the first steamers, they were originally the steam-powered ships like Britannia, for example. Its funnel was clad in a red paint clay combination that was designed to make the ship's funnel not get too hot. It was sort of like an insulator kind of a material. It was applied like paint, but it was a much thicker application. And as the funnel heated up, the paint clay started to cook onto the funnel, and it cooked in a slightly different color red, which gave us the iconic Cunard Red.
Yeah.
So interestingly enough, the Cunard funnel color was almost by accident, I suppose, in terms of that original origin. Now, you'll also notice that Cunard's colors include the black top of the funnel, or in the current ships, the front part of the funnel is black, and then the red kind of covers around the base.
Yeah, yep.
The black part was also a bit of a mistake, a bit of a chance happening, because what would happen is as the ships were making their way from port to port, the smoke and soot from the coal engines would make the top of the funnel dirty in sort of like a residue. And so rather than cleaning it all the time, they just decided to paint the top part of the funnel black, which gave us the red and black. Now,
brilliant. I love it.
You'll also notice that Cunard's funnels have the two stripes, the two black stripes in the red part. If you look back at older Cunard ships, and the funnels had multiple stripes down the funnel. And those were actually joints between the different sections of the funnel. So it was like a section of funnel, then a joint, then a section of funnel, then a joint, and the black bands were originally the joints.
Right.
So the Cunard iconic brand, like so many old, very old and famous brands, came to be through sort of happenstance and through these different combinations of reasons why the funnels were the way they were. The ships used to have their hull painted black. The paddle steamers didn't have a white superstructure. There was no sort of noticeable superstructure. But as the ship started to grow in size, they started to have the white part, which is the where the passenger decks were and in the lifeboat area and that sort of thing.
Yep.
And towards the front of the ship, you would see the white extend down to the bow, and then usually like a row of portholes, and below it there would be the black hull. Very similar to what you see on many of the great ocean liners at that time. When Cunard introduced the Lusitania and Mauretania, they were first painted in this style, but before they entered service, they actually raised the black paint from the hull up to the top of the bow, which gave them, it gave them sort of like a bit of a different forward profile. Actually made them look probably faster and racier and sleeker, which of course was, what they were. They were the fastest ships in the world. but it just sort of gave them that very distinctive look that that they became very well known for. This change to the ships was dropped after Aquitania, so she also had it applied. But when they looked at Queen Mary and Queen Elizabeth, they actually brought the white deck of on the bow back, and that was kept for the queens. And of course, all the way through this, they're using the traditional Cunard colours. But there's no name on the side of the ships, just the name of the ship, but not the name of the company.
Yep.
And there was no visual painting of the logo or anything on the ships. They would fly the Cunard flag, of course, which had the rampant lion holding the globe, which of course is still used to this day, but it wasn't painted on the ship, it was just on the flags. Now, Cunard made one of the most dramatic changes to their livery in the 1940s, when a group of designers, and you can only imagine, were sitting around maybe drinking Midori, perhaps, because they decided to paint an entire cruise ship green. And that was quite a dramatic departure, from the norm. This was Coronia. She was painted in 4 shades of green, and it might seem like a bit of a strange thing today to think of.
It actually sounds awful, to be honest.
Yeah, but it's actually not. It was a unique combination of pale greens that worked really well on Coronia. But the reason why they painted her green, Baz, is not because of some strange mistake or a miscommunication, as you might guess. But she was actually the first liner built for Cunard that was a dual-purpose liner designed to mainly undertake cruising. And so she was so unique in that she would meander around the world year-round that they wanted her to really stand out. And she was given this very unusual livery, which somehow worked for her and became known as the Green Goddess throughout her career.
Oh, of course. Yes, I know the name.
But Yes, and that's Coronia. So very different from the traditional Cunard colours. Then with in the 1960s, QE2 completely walked away from the traditional Cunard colours in the funnel. She was put into service with a black funnel with a white cowling, no red and black bands, which was quite a huge departure. This was, of course, done on purpose. It was done because QE2 was supposed to be the ship that broke the mold of traditional ocean liners. And at the time, they felt that the new color scheme, the very sort of 60s-inspired design and the new color scheme on the funnel would allow her to have her own presence and not be too heavily associated with the old Cunard ships.
Okay.
But she, of course, still carried the black hull and had the Cunard Red lettering, the big block lettering on the side, which had been introduced a few years earlier on the Franconia and the Carmania, but they used it also on the QE2 as well. And that's, of course, what we see all the way through to this day, that big Cunard lettering on the side of the ship.
Very iconic, yeah.
Yes. If we move then a bit further forward, in the era of the Falklands War, the QE2 was called into service.
Of course.
And so she operated as a troop carrier down to the Falklands. And when she finished her service in the Falklands, they gave the ship a complete rebranding, I suppose. They relaunched it as the new QE2. Cunard's funnel colours were added to her funnel for the first time. But the hull was painted a light pebble grey, which is very, very different from the traditional Cunard colours again.
Yeah.
That lasted all of about 6 months. It was not popular. And by halfway around her world cruise, it was so dirty and scuffed from the tugboats and stuff that they decided that they were going to repaint her. And so QE2 was then repainted in the traditional colours. And when she had her re-engining in the late 1980s, she was given a bigger funnel, a thicker funnel, and that had the traditional colours on it as well. In 1994, Barry, QE2 again, was given a repaint, but instead of it being a black hull, it was a dark navy blue. And at this stage, the Cunard lion was applied to the superstructure as a decal above the name Cunard. So you had this sort of emblem there on the hull. Yeah. Now, 2 years after that, the emblem itself was getting damaged from repaints and that sort of thing, so they took it off. And in 1999, they put her back to her black hull colours. So that's where Cunard's kind of current livery was confirmed, the dark hull once again in black and the traditional colours on the funnel. So bring us forward now. Queen Elizabeth, Queen Victoria, and Queen Mary too all carry those same colours that QE2 had towards the end of her career. Queen Anne is going to obviously have the same colours, but unlike the existing queens where the Cunard name is in red on white superstructure, they have put it reversed in white on the black hull, and they've reapplied the emblem. I can only imagine that it's been applied in sort of cut steel, the way that they do on some of the other Carnival brands, where it's kind of embossed into the hull of the ship, which will make that decal problem from the 1990s that QE2 had, that won't be an issue because it will be obviously its own piece of metal that can be painted. And they have said in their latest release that they've just refined some of the elements of the emblem a little bit because it has leaves that go around it, and they're very intricate on the flag and on all of the documentation. I think for metal work that will probably be hard, so it's just been sort of tidied up a little bit. But when they talk about the fact that Queen Anne has a refined livery, it is really very minor compared to what Cunard has done in the past, which I thought was quite interesting, because you think of these brands like Cunard, it's known for its history, it's known for its stability, it's known for its iconic symbolism, and those colours were almost by mistake back in the 1840s. The brand name itself was not applied to most of the ships until the 1960s. And of course, the lion itself, it's not the first time that the lion's been put on the side of the ship, and we might see it being applied to the other ones. I don't know. So we'll see what the future holds.
Yeah, I mean, these cruise lines that have got all this heritage and traditions, they have to be very careful because a lot of people, are very loyal to that kind of icon and styling and things. So to make subtle changes is fine, I guess, but to make some dramatic changes, as you said before, with some of those other changes they made, then it does upset a few people and they end up having to redo things.
Well, I think that's the interesting thing, Baz, is that you look at P&O, for example, which had the absolutely iconic buff funnels, the yellow funnels, and the white hull, and it was so connected to their history and their heritage, and they removed that and replaced it with the blue. And, they've stuck at it, but even to this day, many
people still talk about it,
say, like, I miss the yellow funnels. That was the iconic P&O colours. Cunard, though, I think, is significantly more recognisable in terms of its brand.
Yeah.
And I think it's also a brand that definitely has that embedded interculture piece in terms of its appearance. You can't say that the Queen Mary and the Queen Elizabeth are a continuation of the original queens, for example, if they look so ridiculously different. QE2, they tried to do that on purpose to separate them because they didn't want that old image. But with the current brand, you have to be able to make that link. And so thank goodness, I don't think that they'll be removing the Cunard colours from the funnel or going to a different livery. But you know what, I would say, if they had said Queen Anne was going to be the new Green Goddess, I would have been okay with that.
Would you?
That would have been very interesting. Yeah, absolutely, because there's a historical connection there, right?
Yeah, true.
A luxury, game-changing cruise ship, which is what Queen Anne's supposed to be.
Love it. Now let's just quickly talk about Inga as well, the captain, of course, of Queen Anne. You mentioned she's been around with Cunard for quite some time. You've probably sailed with her, I would imagine, because you've sailed with Cunard an awful lot. But she, of course, will be bringing out this beautiful new ship, and she's going to be sharing the duties with another captain, of course, which is Captain David Hudson. And we look forward to receiving more information. Some more information was dripped out this morning, actually, with some of the interiors of Queen Anne. So we'll include that in next week's show. Chris, once again, mate, thanks again. We'll be talking again all things cruise, all things maritime history, and hopefully a couple of listener questions as well. Same time next week.
That's all for today. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you find your favourite podcasts. Until next time, bon voyage.